6 in 10 people in the world live in Asia. By 2015, over 50% of them will live in urban areas, and by 2050, Asia's population will increase by over 1 billion more. But these aren't just statistics, these are people. These numbers reflect the profound changes in Asia, and they reflect the immense potential of this continent.
In the next 20 years, an estimated 1.1 billion people will be moving into Asia's cities. That means tremendous opportunity, but also tremendous challenges for Asia's leaders.
It's fun to be young in Asia now. There's so many opportunities. You know, even if you're old in Asia, it's great to be old in Asia because people take care of old people. You know, people here care. The difference is people here care a lot, and people go out of their way to look after you.
With people comes power. With momentum comes speed. With growth comes a better future. This is Asia's time. This is Asia Rising. This episode is all about demographics. Young and old, rich and poor, rural and urban, they are all part of Asia. There's a strength in numbers, and Asia has the most impressive numbers in the world. But there are also challenges with organizing and inspiring such a large and diverse population. When you consider what it will take to employ, feed, and engage billions of active minds, you'll understand what keeps business and political leaders up at night. I think we are up for a challenge, and if we harness the immense human capital, Asia will be unstoppable.
East Asia is experiencing a movement of people. Some countries are getting a younger population, some countries are getting an aging population. The middle class is seen as rising. The middle class is politically active in some countries, but not in others. And there's some culture and historical reasons why that's the case. People have looked at China, for example, and they've started to ask about the rising middle class. Not only is this rising middle class leading to demand for consumer goods and product lines that come in from Europe and the United States, not only is it asking for more services, but a lot of people are also saying, is this going to change the social and political makeup of China? Is it going to be, for example, more politically active? Is there going to be a stronger movement for democracy?
Basically, for the last 10 years, what you have seen is the bursting of middle class here in South Korea and so-called Southeast Asian states. And we are able to see this because of the growing interdependence among ourselves, basically so-called supply chain. In other words, we trade not only the finished good, but also so-called parts and components. You know, pretty much, you see a lot of South Korean mobile phone or smartphones. We produce here, what we produce here is a microprocessor chip and the very critical components. All the plastic things and design things are being done by Chinese and, Southeast Asian because they're a lot cheaper, which help them grow their middle class.
We must remember, China is a poor country. It is going to be the world's largest economy. It will still be a poor country. Their per capita income is about $6,000, well below the poverty line. So let's keep in mind, when we talk about Chinese middle class, we're talking about people that in America and Canada would be considered below the poverty line. It's a very different notion of what middle class in the United States. You got a 3,000 square foot house. You got 2 cars. Your kid goes to college. That's middle class in the United States. That is not remotely middle class in China, right? And so those people are not thinking about climate change. They're not thinking about disparities in Myanmar. That is not remotely on their agenda. And by the way, when our average citizen, Americans, Canadians, were living under what would be considered the poverty line, those weren't our concerns either.
Asia continues to face the threat of growing disparity between the rich and the poor, between the urban and the rural, between the coastal and the inland. This remains one of the biggest challenges for Asia. A richer Asia has also meant a more unequal Asia. Asia today is a divided region, whether it's Southeast Asia's own internal challenges or it's South Asia versus East Asia. It's China versus Japan, it's Korea versus Japan. If Asia is to really succeed, it's going to have to find a way to address historical differences and also come together in a way that benefits not just the people in your own nation, but the people in all the countries of the region. I was speaking recently at a university in Thailand, and the question came up, which country was the most unequal in Asia? Many people suggested Pakistan, India, Vietnam, because those countries are perhaps frozen in their minds in terms of the images they saw of poverty in those nations. The real answer today that people find so surprising is that by some statistics, Thailand is the most unequal country in the region. What does that mean? It doesn't mean Thailand is the poorest country or the richest country, but Thailand, like many other countries as they've grown, have also seen a rising gap between the richest and the poorest.
Looking across Asia, there are certainly a number of countries whose economic growth rates are extraordinary, where the infrastructure is good, you see great progress, but there are definitely countries that are still struggling, have issues of poverty, they are less developed, and some very newly emerging nations like Burma that are really just kind of rejoining ASEAN and the world economically and in terms of development. I think that's a real challenge. It's also an opportunity. As Asian countries grow, how can you spread that growth in economics? How can you spread the knowledge, the experience to lift people out of poverty?
You know, Thailand is full of warm and friendly people, but it's not a culture where you can get away with shouting at people. You know, you have to be very calm, sensitive, very, very sensitive. Even when you think that you have accommodated everyone and been so sensitive, be more gracious with people. It never hurts in Asia, all over Asia. You know, you have generations, older people, younger people, everyone. It's all about respect. You know, you're older than me, I grant you respect because that's how I was raised. So I think that, you know, just these basic principles, manners, they apply all over the world. I think maybe these politeness, respect for elders, this is very important in Asia. This is the key to success.
At first in Mongolia, I think I just felt welcomed by the people and their hospitality and their eagerness to interact and to be helpful. But, you know, sometimes we learn lessons in very odd ways. And my wife, as she became confined to a wheelchair, then all of a sudden I saw how do people treat her in this society versus in others. In America, mostly we want to make laws to help people in wheelchairs, put in a ramp or put in some device or something. Mongolia has none of that. They don't even have sidewalks, really, that are sidewalks or road, but it's the obligation of the people to help one another. I go out, an old man with an old lady in a wheelchair on a bumpy road that's all broken up. I have no worries because always a hand will appear from nowhere. It's their obligation to me as a human being to help take care of me. They don't ask permission, may I help you? Because that would be silly. They reach out and they help. I can go anywhere in Mongolia. I can do anything in Mongolia. And the people take care of us. I think sometimes when Westerners come into Asia, they assume there's an Asian way of life and an Asian sensibility. And yet each culture has its own way. In Mongolia, for example, the people are very egalitarian. They want to meet you as an equal. They will treat you as an equal, but they expect you to treat them as an equal. They will not bow down before you. They will not flower you with honorary phrases. They will speak to you as one person to another. You meet a herder in the countryside of Mongolia, you have the right to walk up to his ger, to his home. You don't ask for permission to enter. That would be almost an insult. You walk in, you sit down, and you wait for tea to be served, and then they will serve you, and then they will ask you, what news do you bring? Their gift to you is warmth and hospitality. Your gift to them is news.
Tourism in itself as the economy kind of develops, becomes a more important sector for people. As people have more wealth and have more money to spend and time to spend, they tend to do more tourism. And that's definitely true in all of the Asian countries. And of course, it's just at the beginning stage compared to Europe or Northern America. But as Chinese become more affluent, as the other Asian countries boom economically, and of course the tourism itself is increasing enormously. Like last year we had an overall growth in the world of world tourism about 4% or so, but in Asia it was close to more than 10%. In Korea, for example, we had an influx in the last 4 years, every year, double-digit growth numbers. Yeah? And the quality of tourism, meaning the amount they spend, is going up all the time. Like we had about 20% increase in inbound tourism revenue last year compared to the year before, and it's made up mainly of more affluent Chinese, more affluent Southeast Asians, and so on. In the future, I think the tourism sector will go to a level where we have now in Europe, for example. Neighboring countries have an annual exchange of tourism that amounts to at least 50% of their combined populations. Yeah? Like Germany, for example, it's 80 million people, and 78 million go out of the country per year, and the majority of them to the neighboring countries. So if you see the exchange between Germany and France, France and England, Great Britain and Spain and so on, you have an annual flow of tourism that is up to 50% of the combined population. So that's the vision for Asia. The Asian population of more than 2 billion people, yeah, in the future, at least I think 1 billion will be visiting each other.
Tourism worldwide is one of the most important industries in terms of foreign exchange earner. Many countries in Asia have been specializing on tourism within countries, as is the case in OECD countries, in developed market economies. Tourism is just a critical component of economic activities everywhere. And sustainable tourism movements around this have been growing in Asia as they have done in Latin America. Preservation of the nature often comes with it, because through tourism the value of nature, natural capital, is being recognized, the importance of preservation is recognized. So it can be an enormously positive force, but if unchecked it also can destroy much.